In a world plagued by generic noise, one goblin can save us all.
Hey gang, and welcome back. Just so you know, you can use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, one word, at flipsidegaming.com to get 10% off orders $10 or more. You can also use the promo code at Original Magic Art on everything except for paintings. And finally, you can use the code at mtg.multizone.ca to get 10% off of your orders of singles. Using the code will help you save some money and help out the channel at the same time. Just to let you know, Flipside Gaming is going to be giving away a full set of Commander 2019 when it releases to one lucky winner. The contest will be running from July 12th until August 26th, and all you have to do to enter is either use my promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, no spaces, on an order of over $10 or more, or you can send a stamped, self-addressed envelope or postcard to Flipside Gaming. It's one entry per person, so good luck, have fun, and I hope you win. I can barely contain myself because Martin's playing Ayula, Queen Among Bears. He's keeping 3 forests, Balduvian Bears, Solemn Simulacrum, Cavern of Souls, and Bane of Progress. Still hot under the collar from those new Populate cards, I'm playing Trostani, keeping a Mirror Pool, Scattered Groves, Canopy Vista, Rootborn Defenses, Phyrexian Processor, Blighted Woodland, and Green Warden of Marasa. You better stop what you're doing, cause he is the law. And Nick is playing Azor, keeping Archon of the Triumvirate, Liev Sky Knight, 2 Plains, a Soul Ring, a Remote Isle, and a Pacification Array. And last but not least, he's not sad anymore because he's playing Savra, and Ben is keeping a Court of Calling, a Temple of Malady, Golgari Guildgate, Kokusho, Llanowar Wastes, Reanimate, and a Garruk Apex Predator. Ben wins the die roll and starts us off. Ben plays a tapped Temple of Malady, scrying 1 and putting it to the bottom. Martin plays a forest and passes. Nick plays a tapped Remote Isle, passing to me. I play a tapped Temple of Plenty, scrying as well. Continuing the trend, Ben plays a tapped Golgari Guildgate. Martin plays his Cavern of Souls, naming bears. He pays 2 for Ayula and passes to Nick. Nick plays a Plains and drops Soul Ring. He then casts Pacification Array and threatens Ayula with it before passing. I play a tap Scattered Groves, casting Worldly Tutor to save some time. Ben plays his Llanowar Wastes and passes. Martin plays another forest and heads to combat. Nick activates the array, tapping Ayula, and Martin passes to his post-combat main phase to cast a Cultivate and passes. Nick plays a Glacial Fortress, while I put a Wood Elves on top of my library. I draw my Wood Elves, and I play a Blighted Woodland, and then cast the Wood Elves. I go and find a Forest card, passing to Ben while searching. Ben drops a Forest and casts Quicksilver Amulet. He passes to Martin. Martin plays another Forest and casts Solemn Simulacrum. He announces he'll head to combat again, and Nick taps down Ayula once more. Martin then passes, going to find his basic. Nick plays a Plains and drops Azor in his main phase. With the Sphinx entering the battlefield, all of his opponents can't cast instants or sorceries on their respective turns, and with nothing else, he passes. I play a tapped Canopy Vista, passing to Ben. Ben draws, but has no lands to play, and he passes turn. Martin plays a Gaia's Cradle, and the table takes note. He casts a Balduvian Bear, and as it enters, he resolves Ayula's triggered ability to give target bear 2+1/+1 counters, with the target being Ayula. Martin then moves to combat, swinging the Solemn at Ben and Ayula at me. I block with the Wood Elves, and Ben brings in Kokusho with the Amulet to block Solemn. With the Sad Robot dying, Martin draws a card. In his second main phase, Martin then pays for a Bane of Progress to wipe the board of artifacts and enchantments. With its ability resolving, it gains 3+1/+1 counters, and Martin passes to Nick. Nick plays an island and casts an Azorius Locket. He then taps it to cast a Judge's Familiar, passing to me. I play a tap Mirror Pool and pay the 4 to activate and sacrifice my Blighted Woodlands. I go to find 2 basics as I pass to Ben. Ben draws and still can't find that land. He does have enough to cast his commander, Savra, which he does, and he passes turn. Martin plays a forest and casts Genesis Wave where X is 6. He hits 5 decent targets, with the only whiff being a Terastodon. He has the Vanquisher's banner come in and he names bears for it, while Cream of the Crop, Soul Ring, the Forest, and the Yang Yu come in. Martin then casts an Emerald Medallion, and he downticks his Walker to put a +1/+1 counter on the Balduvian Bear. Heading to combat, he swings a Balduvian Bear at me for 4, and he passes to Nick. Nick draws and heads to combat. Azor goes swinging at Martin, and Nick pays for the on-attack trigger of his commander. He puts 3 into the X and gains 3 life from it and draws 3 cards, with Martin then taking the hit. Nick sadly doesn't find a land though, and he passes. I draw for turn and tap out in my main phase to cast Zendikar Resurgent before passing to Ben. Ben draws and heads to discard. He dumps a Grave Titan into his yard during his cleanup step before passing to Martin. Martin plays a forest and casts a Chameleon Colossus in his main phase. This triggers the banner on cast, letting him draw a card. It then enters and triggers Ayula, which lets Martin have the Chameleon fight Kakusho. With the fight trigger on the stack, Ben taps his lands and creatures to cast a Convoked Chord of Calling where X is 3. He grabs an Eternal Witness, putting it to field, and returning his Quicksilver Amulet to hand with the Witness's Enter the Battlefield trigger. Nick explains he thought about using the Familiar, but he wasn't too worried when the X was 3. Kakusho then dies and drains the table for 5, while Ben gains 15. Martin then casts Triumph of the Hordes, and decides to take me out. He is aware that I gain a lot of life, so it's probably the right call. Nick draws and casts a Leah of Sky Knight. It enters, and he detains the Chameleon Colossus before casting a Rule of Law and passing to Ben. Ben draws, but keeps the card separate from his hand. He decides to Miracle the Entreat the Dead he just drew, putting 1 into the X. He doesn't want to go for 2 and have Nick counter it, so he only brings back Kakusho and passes to Martin. Martin draws and plays a forest. He casts Growing Rites of Itlamok, revealing a striped bear and putting to his hand. He downticks his Walker once more, putting a counter on the Chameleon, and then passes to Nick. At the end of turn, he gets to transform the Rites into Itlamok, Cradle of the Sun. Nick draws for turn, and plays an Asperius Skywatch as his 1 spell. He detains the Colossus again, before swinging at Martin for 9. Nick then passes to Ben. Ben draws, and we're still waiting on that 5th land. He heads to combat, hitting Martin with Kakusho, and moves to his second main phase. We see a Killing Wave hitting the stack, where X is 3. This forces everyone to either pay 3 life to keep a creature around, or sacrifice it. Ben sacrifices all of his creatures, which has Kakusho drain the table for 5, and Ben gain 10. Martin sacrifices 2 of his, while Nick pays 3 per creature. They then resolve the Savra triggers from a green creature being sacrificed, with Ben gaining 2 life, and then he loses 6 life as he sacrifices 3 black creatures, forcing his opponents to sacrifice 3 creatures as well. In Martin's turn, he recasts Ayula in his main phase, drawing from the banner on cast trigger. He then resolves his Cream of the Crop trigger, keeping one of the cards from the top 3 on top of his library and bottoming the rest. Martin then downtakes his Walker for the last time to put a +1/+1 counter on Ayula, and he passes to Nick. Nick plays another island and heads to combat. He boops Ben with Azor, and in his second main phase, casts Dovin, Architect of Law. He upticks his Walker to gain 2 life and draw a card before passing turn. At this point though, Nick and Martin are making a deal, with Martin promising to focus only on Ben and not attack Nick, provided Nick doesn't wipe the board in the next few turns. Ben reanimates Kakusho in his main phase, and I'm starting to see a pattern. Ben does lose 6 life at least from the dragon re-entering, and he passes to Martin. Martin drops a Reclamation Sage in his main phase to blow up the Rule of Law that's been keeping him down. He then casts a Striped Bear, drawing from the banner trigger, then giving Ayula 2 +1/+1 counters and drawing from its own Enter the Battlefield trigger. He then resolves the Cream of the Crop trigger, looking at the top 3. Martin then drops a Champion of the Lambholt, and then a Werebear. He draws from the on-cast trigger from the banner, and puts more counters on Ayula and 1 on the Champion, and then resolves the Crop trigger again. Martin then casts Ayula's influence, and he discards a land, making a bear token. This triggers Ayula and the crop, with Martin putting counters on Ayula and one on the champion. He then resolves a crop trigger next, and heads to combat. Ayula heads towards Ben, and Ben blocks with Kakusho, draining the table again for 5 life each, and gaining 10. Before passing to Nick, Martin then casts Descendant's Path in his post-combat main phase. Nick draws and upticks Dovin, gaining 2 life and drawing a card. He plays a Tranquil Cove, gaining 1 life as it comes in tapped, and heads to combat. He hits Ben again, and this time casts an Archon of the Triumvirate in his post-combat main phase, before passing to Ben. Ben finds his precious 5th land, playing a basic swamp. He pays 4 to recast his Quicksilver Amulet, and passes to Martin. Martin reveals an Eternal Witness off the top to the Descendant's Path trigger. It shares a creature type with the champion, and Martin gets to cast it for free. He decides to bring back the Genesis Wave to his hand, and he also has the Cream of the Crop trigger, looking at the top 2, and bottoming one and topping the other. Martin then draws that card for turn. In his main phase, Martin then taps the Cradle for a Caged Sun, naming green as it enters. He then taps out, going all in on the Genesis Wave, paying 31 into the X. He reveals 31 cards off the top, and gets a zillion triggers from everything entering, most notably a Craterhoof Behemoth. Martin's Champion of the Lambhold gets huge, and he draws 15 cards from the Regal Force entering, and he has a ton of Ayula triggers to resolve, fighting basically every creature on the board that isn't his, and then pumping Ayula with more counters. Martin then drops a Woodfall Primus from his hand, and has it blow up Dovin. He also has 2 Planeswalkers to work on, and he upticks the new Vivian to give Ayula Vigilance and Reach, and then downticks old Vivian to blow up Nick's Locket. Heading to combat, he maintains his pact with Nick, even with the risk of a board wipe coming next turn, and he swings Ayula at Ben to take him out with commander damage. Martin then moves to his second main phase, discarding a bunch of lands to Ayula's influence and making more bear tokens, which in turn pump Ayula to be even larger and larger and larger. He then passes to Nick. Nick draws, hoping for a board wipe, but he doesn't find one, and seeing Martin's board state, gives the game to Martin. Game review time. Right off the bat, I think Martin was totally in the right to take me out. I just casted Mana Doubler, and I actually had the Regal Behemoth in my hand, which means I would have had triple mana on my turn. Things could have gotten quickly out of control for everyone else, and it was probably the right move. I think this was a much stronger showing for Ben than any other game that he's been in, but unfortunately he was stuck on so few lands. It was still pretty impressive considering that he only had 4 and then 5 for most of the game, and he was able to recur Kakusho several times. Nick continues to show us how thematic and focused his decks can be, and although not the most powerful, he certainly embodies the theme that he's going for. There was an opportunity for him to take out Martin, but I don't know if in the long run he would have had what it took to take out Ben. Ben's massive life total was certainly helping him out, and I think with one good removal spell, he would have taken Azor out of the game, and that would have put Nick way too far behind. I was very impressed with Ayula, and actually played a game with her another time, and was really impressed with her again. Her trigger really embodies the best of both worlds, where you either pump her up, or are able to fight things, and basically allow you to do whatever's best at the situation at hand. It does require you to play a very underrepresented tribe, which is bears, but thankfully there are a lot of changeling cards that allow us to round out the package. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.